You know, it's kind of amazing how quickly some new drugs seem to appear these days.
Really is.
But what most of us probably don't think about is how they're actually made. And apparently that whole process is changing pretty significantly.
Yeah, that's right. There's this technology, flow chemistry, that's really starting to make waves in the pharmaceutical world.
Exactly. You sent over some fascinating stuff on this, and it really got us thinking about flow chemistry and how it could, well, maybe even revolutionize getting medicines from the lab bench to the pharmacy shelf.
Hmm.
So today we want to give everyone the inside scoop on this approach, explain why it's important for the safety and availability of drugs we might all rely on down the line.
Absolutely. So the plan for this deep dive is first to unpack what flow chemistry actually is, especially for making pharmaceuticals.
Right.
Then we'll dig into the big advantages, particularly around safety and scaling up the production of those crucial active ingredients, the APIs.
API is the actual stuff in the medicine that does the work.
Exactly, the active pharmaceutical ingredients. And finally, we'll look at some real concrete examples of where it's being used right now.
Okay, sounds good. So let's start right there. What is flow chemistry? Lay it out for us.
Okay, so fundamentally, flow chemistry means doing chemical reactions inside a continuous stream, usually within a tube or some kind of channel, called a reactor.
A continuous stream.
Yeah, think of it less like the old way, mixing everything in a big flask or tank, which we call batch chemistry.
Right, like baking a cake one batch at a time.
Sort of, yeah. Flow chemistry is much more like a factory assembly line. Your starting materials go in one end, they react as they flow through the system,
Uh-huh.
and the finished product continuously comes out the other end.
Okay, so it's always running, always producing, not starting and stopping for each batch, like a continuous production line.
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
And instead of having, a huge volume of chemicals reacting all at once,
Which sounds potentially risky.
it can be.
Yeah.
With flow, you're dealing with much, much smaller volumes moving through the reactor at any given moment. But it's moving constantly.
Okay.
And this continuous nature, this way of working, it offers some really powerful advantages, especially when you're making complex molecules like APIs.
All right, let's get into those advantages then. This is where it starts to sound really transformative. You mentioned safety first. How does doing reactions in this flowing stream make things inherently safer?
Well, probably the biggest safety benefit comes directly from that small volume I mentioned.
Okay.
Because you're only reacting tiny amounts at any single point in time, the potential hazard, if something goes wrong, is drastically reduced. Think about reactions that generate a lot of heat.
Exothermic reactions.
Exactly, exothermic reactions, or situations where you might form unstable intermediate chemicals.
Yeah.
Handling those in small, continuously moving quantities is just inherently less dangerous than having a huge vat of the stuff.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Less material means less potential energy release, less risk of a runaway reaction.
Precisely. And there's another angle, too. Flow systems allow for incredibly precise control over the reaction conditions.
Like temperature and pressure.
Temperature, pressure, mixing. All of it. Because the reaction zone is small and well-defined, you can heat or cool it very efficiently, mix things perfectly. These parameters can be monitored and adjusted in real time, often automatically.
Ah, so automation plays a big role here.
It can, yes.
Hmm.
And that level of tight control really minimizes the chances of unwanted side reactions or things getting out of hand. It leads to a much more stable, predictable process.
Better control equals better safety.
Got it. Okay, what about the next big hurdle in drug making? Scalability. Going from making grams in the lab to potentially tons for the market.
Yeah.
How does flow chemistry help there?
This is actually one of the most elegant aspects, I think. It's a concept often called numbering up or scaling out.
Numbering up.
Yeah. So instead of building one absolutely gigantic, maybe difficult to manage batch reactor.
Which I imagine gets exponentially harder to control as it gets bigger. It does.
Hmm.
Mixing becomes uneven, temperature gradients form.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real challenge. With flow chemistry, to increase production, you don't necessarily build a bigger reactor. You just run more identical small reactors in parallel.
Oh, I see. Like adding more assembly lines instead of trying to make one massive one.
Exactly that. You have your optimized, efficient, safe flow reactor unit, and if you need 10 times the output, you just set up 10 of them running side by side.
That sounds incredibly more flexible and, well, logical.
It is. It avoids many of the pitfalls of traditional scale-up. And because each of those parallel units operates under the same precisely controlled conditions,
Uh-huh.
you get very consistent product quality batch after batch, or rather stream after stream. Scale-up becomes much more predictable.
Consistency is key in pharmaceuticals, obviously.
Absolutely critical.
Right.
And this inherent predictability and control also lends itself really well to automation, as you pointed out earlier. You can imagine integrated systems where the flow reactors are connected directly to purification units, all running continuously and automatically. It streamlines the whole manufacturing chain.
Okay, so the picture is smaller volumes, much safer, easier to control, easier to scale by duplication, and great for automation. It really does sound like a paradigm shift.
It has that potential, definitely.
Can you give us some specific recent examples? Where is this actually being put into practice for making drugs or their essential components?
Yeah, absolutely. There are quite a few now. One interesting case involves something called the Barbier reaction.
Barbier reaction rings a bell, but refresh my memory.
Sure, it's a type of reaction chemists use to form carbon-carbon bonds,
Yeah.
which is, fundamental for building the skeletons of most drug molecules.
Okay, making the basic structure.
Exactly. And researchers have successfully used flow chemistry to perform a Barbier reaction needed to make a key intermediate for the drug atomoxetine.
Atomoxetine. That's used for ADHD, right?
That's the one. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Hmm.
By adapting this specific chemical step to a continuous flow process,
Uh-huh.
they found they could get better yields, meaning more of the desired product, and crucially, they improved the safety profile compared to doing it in a traditional batch setup. The small scale and precise control were key.
Better yield, better safety. That's a clear win-win for making that specific medicine component.
Definitely.
Okay, what's another example?
Another important area is the preparation of isocyanates.
Isocyanates sounds familiar, but also potentially tricky.
They are. Isocyanates are very reactive chemical building blocks used in synthesizing lots of things, including some pharmaceuticals, but they can be hazardous materials to work with.
Right, reactive usually means you need to be careful.
Extremely careful. Traditional large batch production of isocyanates or handling their precursors can involve significant safety risks.
So flow chemistry offers an advantage here too.
A big one, yes.
Yeah.
By generating and immediately using isocyanates within a contained flow reactor.
Yeah. Ah, so you make it and use it right away in the flow.
Exactly. You minimize the amount of this hazardous material present at any one time. The precise temperature control in flow systems is also vital for handling these reactive species safely. It significantly reduces the risks compared to bulk handling.
So it enables the safer use of these really useful but potentially dangerous chemical tools.
Precisely. It makes the process safer for the operators and can also lead to cleaner reactions and higher purity products because you have better control.
That makes sense. So stepping back, how does all this connect to the bigger picture of drug development and getting treatments to patients?
Well, technologies like flow chemistry fit perfectly with the overall goals in the pharmaceutical industry. Everyone wants manufacturing to be more efficient, greener, meaning less waste, safer, and ultimately more cost-effective. Flow chemistry kicks a lot of those boxes. If you can make APIs more reliably, more safely, and potentially faster or cheaper, that has downstream benefits. It could lead to lower drug costs eventually, or faster development timelines, getting new medicines to patients sooner.
So for our listeners, what's the main takeaway here? When they hear about a new drug, what should they remember about how it might have been made using something like flow chemistry?
I think the key thing is to realize that there's constant innovation happening behind the scenes in the actual manufacturing science. And things like flow chemistry represent a move towards smarter, safer, and more efficient ways to produce the medicines we rely on. It's about improving the underlying processes to ensure a reliable, high-quality supply of therapies.
It's easy to forget all the complex chemistry and engineering that goes into that pill bottle. Flow chemistry seems like a really important part of that hidden process.
It really is becoming one. And it makes you think, doesn't it?
Has-
Well, if this continuous controlled, often automated approach works so well, what's the future? Could we see maybe small, modular, fully automated drug factories popping up?
Like plug-and-play drug manufacturing.
Sort of. Imagine the implications.
Mhm.
Could that enable truly personalized medicine production on demand? Or allow us to set up rapid production facilities anywhere in the world during a health crisis?
Wow, yeah. That opens up a whole range of possibilities, from super customized treatments to pandemic response.
Exactly. It's definitely something to keep an eye on how these manufacturing technologies continue to evolve and what that means for the future of medicine.